Hi, hello everyone. Welcome to the webinar entitled Building Green Together, Local Innovations Driving Global Change. This webinar is coordinated by the GlobalABC Subnationals Action Group. And without further ado, I will please welcome Gunnar Arol, Head of the Cities Unit at UNEP, for a word of introduction, and also co-lead of the GlobalABC Subnationals Action Group. Gunnar, thank you. The floor is yours. Have a good webinar, everyone.
Thank you so much, Malia. Dear colleagues, thank you so much for taking time to be part of today's webinar. My name is Gulnara Rol. I'm Head of Cities Unit at the Climate Change Division at the United Nations Environment Program. I'm also Head of Secretariat of the Global Alliance for Building Construction Secretariat here in Paris. Many of us who were following the Global Alliance Building Construction remember that last year we established an action group on subnational governments to highlight the importance of role of the local and regional governments in the building sector decarbonization. And I'm really very pleased to open this webinar today on behalf of the 4 co-chairs of this action group. It is co-chaired actually by UNEP, by GIZ, by UN Habitat, and ICLEI, who is actually hosting this webinar. And today we are launching the first product of the work of this action group, in a way, something which is framing the work of our action group. So just also to invite you to cooperate. So following this webinar, we will be really happy to hear from you what you think are the priorities in terms of the local climate action related to the building construction sector at the local level. And we will be very happy to add into this work plan. But of course, we all know that the role of local regional government is very important, because at UNEP, for instance, but also at other organizations who are engaged in this action group, we are very active in supporting currently the process of the national determined contributions, so NDCs, and our colleagues, for instance, at ICLEI, and it's a whole group of CHAMP who is working quite a lot in order to highlight the importance of the local regional government's engagement in the NDCs. And for instance, this week there is also the one of the climate weeks in Panama taking place. So I'm sure that this topic is also under discussion in Panama this week. And we are now have very important milestones going towards Bonn, and then later on to the COP30. So this is really a call for action to all of us, all of you who are attending this workshop, to think together about what we could do following the launch of this very important report that our colleagues will present. We were able to start up this work of the Subnational Action Group, of course, to a very important input of our partners, whom I already mentioned. And I would like to express the special support to GIZ for their support, providing coordination support to the GlobalABC Subnational Action Group, which allowed us actually to develop a work plan. And with this, I would like to introduce Carmen Vogt, who is co-lead of the Subnational Group. And she's also representing GIZ as one of the co-chairs. So, Carmen, floor is yours.
Thank you very, very much, dear Gulnara, for your opening remarks, and a very warm welcome also from my side to all of you who are joining this launch webinar today. It is great to see so many of you interested in the topic and to be active in enhancing the decarbonization of the built environment at the subnational level. Yes, I think 2025 is a very important year for subnational climate action in cities. This year's COP30 in Belém is considered as the COP of the Amazon cities, but also many other cities as well. And in this first letter in March, the COP president already invited leaders and stakeholders beyond the UNFCCC, among them subnational governments, to join the global action and Multilevel. This means the global effort of cooperation among peoples against climate change and for the progress of humanity. And I think in this context, there is a very significant role of subnational stakeholders in increasingly recognized urban movements, and also another urban ministerial meeting will be expected for Belém. I think there's also, yes, the broader political attention on subnational, and this is also true for the buildings and construction sector. As Gulnara already mentioned, members of the GlobalABC established this subnational action group last year to facilitate dialogue, to foster the exchange among each others, the participated institutions, but also with many other stakeholders. And I think this is really important to accelerate local solutions for a just and inclusive transition towards decarbonized and resilient buildings, and also within the construction sector. And as Gulnara also mentioned, GIZ is one of the founding members of this action group, and I'm honored to be one of the 4 co-leads together with Lea Ranalda from UN Habitat, Gulnara, of course, from UNEP, and Marijke van Staden from ICLEI, who are joining us and playing a very, very active role and a great commitment in this subnational group. GIZ is a strong and committed partner as well, as we consider also the much needed global buildings transition. And in this regard, we are implementing GIZ projects worldwide together with partners on integrated solutions, strong multi-stakeholder and multi-level partnerships, and always targeted financing, policy support, and public and private collaboration. We also support the engagement of subnational governments and stakeholders in the broader NDC processes and implementation plans to make them more effective. Also to show how the CHAMP initiative can be implemented on the ground, and to find also identify collaboration in the countries. So their inclusion in national roadmaps towards zero carbon and resilient buildings can lead to very fast and significant impacts in this critical sector, as the results are very concrete. And we thus need clear frameworks for both public and private actors that guide the building's transition, and also financing mechanism to close the finance gap. I think this is absolutely key. At the end, of course, it is important not only to learn from punctual implementation of projects, scaling up of concrete examples or successful activities and projects in the building sector at a subnational level is very crucial, also to convince national and international decision makers. I think therefore we are on a very good way that also the building sector among the buildings breakthrough is getting more and more relevance and in importance also in the broader climate agenda and processes. And so I'm very much looking forward also today to the new study, and already in the new GlobalABC report, you can find many inspiring cases from around the globe. And with this, I would like to end by underlining that collaboration, innovation, peer exchange across all institutions around the globe can accelerate the transition to a more net zero carbon building sector and more circular constructions. And I think only together we can make a difference. And I'm very much looking forward, of course, to the inputs, but also to your feedback from the participants. And in this frame today, but also beyond, you can always contact us to share more information. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Carmen. Thank you very much, Gulnara. I will now leave the floor to Mark Evans-Stanton, Director at ICLE, to present the key opportunities, strategies, and recommendations. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you so much, Malia. And colleagues, it's a real pleasure to be with you today. And yes, I'm super excited to present to you our new report, Local Solutions and Implementation for Green Buildings and Construction. And very much, as Carmen highlighted, as well as Gulnara, Multilevel Action and Partnership is at the heart of this publication. So without much ado, let me go and show a couple of opportunities also for you to understand how you can bring that into your own work and activities. But first of all, a big, loud, fantastic shout out to the Federal Ministry of Economic Cooperation and Development of the German government. This report was developed with funding from the BMZ and supported by the GIZ. So also, Carmen, to you and your team, very much warm thanks. And we've had a couple of wonderful collaboration space, as you can also see from the list there. Now, why did we compile this report? So it very much aims to inform, but especially to inspire government representatives at all levels, but also planners, investors, NGOs, civil society, and the private sector. We want to showcase opportunities for action to not only decarbonize, which is critical, but also to enhance resilience and embrace the just transition and equity in this sector, where there is so much to be done to make sure we all live and work in comfortable buildings that really address those aspects. A critical component was also to showcase the power and the possibilities of multi-level and multi-partner action, because no single organization or entity can work and do this alone. We do need that partnership space. And we actually have also a couple of recommendations for key stakeholder groups, which I will share with you at the end. Now, a couple of facts and figures. The building and construction sector accounts for about 34% of energy-rated carbon dioxide emissions. That's quite a high percentage, and also 32% of energy demand. And again, one can look at energy demand and reducing energy demand through clear, better design, but also we wish to make sure that the buildings are more resilient as well. So that's a component that we can bring into the thinking. Social impact, of course, this is a wonderful space for job creation, especially in green retrofits, up to 30 jobs per 1 million invested. And it's very understandable that we need to look at these dense urban areas. So 80% of cities worldwide do not have affordable housing options for the majority of the population. And we do see the need to step up there. These reports are coming from the World GBC and the GlobalABC. So we also put a link at the end where you can read these very interesting documents to deepen your understanding. And 2.4 years of additional life expectancy through adequate housing. So people need good housing. And we can certainly invest more and more responsible. Now, subnational governments already are investing about 70% of climate relevant investment, but that's not adequate. It's not enough. So we need to step up and make sure that investment is flowing, and trillions of dollars are needed. And here we need blended finance. We need not only public funding, but also private sector funding to make sure that we can deliver what is needed globally in terms of building and construction. We've looked at a couple of areas which I think really sets the scene, not just standard design a building, build a building, and break it down when it's no longer needed. But we wanted to really look at the just transition principles, energy use in buildings, circularity approaches, how are we more efficient with our materials, and planning for the impacts of climate change, so climate change adaptation and enhancing urban resilience, to make sure we don't need to rebuild after every catastrophe. Now, let's start with the just transition principles, because that's people-centered. We really want to make sure that we address the impacts of low-income people with marginalized communities and workers, to make sure that their support and the way we design and create buildings and work in the construction space is equitable, that there's meaningful participation, and that there's social inclusion. And in particular, also, we want to focus on empowering women in leadership, in skills, and access to finance. You see a lot of ladies in the architecture space, but not so much in some of the other areas where we really can get more of an equitable space, also looking at the gender approach. Now, of course, we use energy in buildings. We all switch on our lights on and off, but our building codes in many countries are outdated, and that is pretty straightforward to step that up. There are fantastic examples out there on modern, useful building codes that help us reduce and reflect on how we use energy in buildings. We can prioritize retrofitting and redesigning, bringing in passive design so that you don't need active energy, but you actually, through airflow and just having better lighting by designing windows in a better way. All of these things are well known and yet need to be stepped up in the application. And last but not least, on the energy side, renewable energy integration is key. Basically making your buildings essentially little mini powerhouses, if you will. The circular approach I find extremely fascinating because, again, we're looking at limited global resources. How can we reduce the need for raw materials, reuse what has been maybe that can be recycled, and looking at regenerative materials, and the whole life cycle thinking comes at the core here. So really promoting reuse and recovery of materials that can go into building new buildings or in retrofit as well. On the planning side there, you're looking more at a district or citywide level or even territorial-wide approach. How can we upgrade informal settlements, of which there are many in this world, with more resilient and affordable housing? Informal settlements, by definition, are not resilient in most cases. So that stepping up is really critical. We can combine grey and green infrastructure, green-blue infrastructure from the start. So really thinking more cohesively, coherently on a territorial level, and link adaptation, also looking at water, waste, energy systems. That holistic approach is just logical and makes sense also if you're looking at the limited resources we have. So every euro used needs to be well invested, and planning can help us think that through quite carefully. We've also looked at enabling factors. What makes things move? First of all, looking at governments. Multi-level governance is a critical component where one can work better and more effectively if you communicate and align and coordinate across national level, regional or subnational level, and local level, so municipalities. So having conversations, having not top-down conversations, but having a collective conversation. What is the role of each level of government in this space? At the national level, policy, but also enabling the flow of finance. The local level, quite often also local bylaws and looking at enforcing regulations as well. These are areas that can be very well stepped up in many cases, but governments alone will not be able to deal with this complex sector. So we also want multi-stakeholder partnerships where governments, the private sector, civil society can work collectively together. Again, we wish to design and use beautiful buildings that are functional and respond to a changing environment within an environment where resources are more limited. Civil society gets quite passionate about that. We need to go into listening mode as well. When I think Gulnara mentioned the NDCs as well as Carmen, The nationally determined contributions are currently being updated. Some have already been updated, but these are essentially the national commitments to step up climate action, to be more ambitious, and to look at not only decarbonization, but also resilience, also looking at the national adaptation plan. So vertical integration, where you're connecting your plans, is critical, as is horizontal integration, looking at not at a single sector, buildings alone, but buildings, waste, water, energy, all of these can connect, and looking across value chains, of course, as well. The strategic frameworks are critical. If we get those right, we can move fast and move very efficiently towards near zero and energy efficient building practices. And of course, money. Money makes the world go round. We need financial enabling factors as well, specifically looking at public-private people partnerships and apologies, the strategic allocation of available resources. We have an amazing array of case studies around the world. A few of these will speak both, will be presenting this morning and in our session this afternoon. I really urge you to look at those. Those are really fun to look at. And now coming to the recommendations for stakeholders. We're addressing here national governments and call on them to establish more ambitious targets, to integrate policies at that global level or the national level, and develop robust roadmaps. And there are fantastic examples, again, developed and supported by the GABC. So go and take a look at that website to see what is a good national roadmap. For subnational governments, we urge them to assess what are your local needs, looking at people and place, and set clear decarbonization targets, looking at resilience, and your integrated urban planning. That is a role of the city level, for example, and also an area where you can foster collaboration with your citizens, with your local businesses, and so on. Financing institutions, funding has to flow, financing has to flow much faster. We do need public money as seed money, but we need the private sector firmly involved and investing in this space, making sure that also innovation is taken into account. There is a need to adopt that whole life carbon assessment approach. We can't just look at buildings in isolation. It is really a life cycle concept across supply chains, also looking at the different technologies and materials that are being used. And of course, last but not least, the NGOs, the development agencies, all need to be on board, also helping to build capacity of civil society, fostering partnerships and co-designing those wonderful buildings that we live in and work in. We have mentioned a few of the global initiatives, such as CHAMP. I think Carmen mentioned that, the Coalition for High Ambition Multi-Level Partnerships. This is exactly a partnership where the national and local level can work more clearly together. I would also just highlight the Marrakesh Partnership for Global Climate Action, which is in the run-up to the climate COP, the COP negotiations and the COP 30 in Brazil this year. The Marrakesh Partnership will firmly be active there. All of these initiatives have a particular role to play, and we explain that briefly in the publication. We've got some wonderful references for you. We will make this, this available for you as well. So I will just wrap up here to say thank you so much, and back to Malia.
Thank you very much, Marike. We don't have questions in the chat yet, so I will directly jump into the intervention of Dr. Pranita Umradkar from Nagpur region in India, to present a roadmap for decarbonizing the buildings and construction sector. Pranita, the floor is yours. Thank you very much. Yes, it's perfect. We can see in full screen.
Good morning, everyone. On behalf of Nagpur Smart and Sustainable City Development Corporation Limited, I would like to thank you, GlobalABC, for providing this opportunity to present Zero Carbon Building Action Plan for Nagpur. So let's get right into the topic. The Zero Carbon Building Action Plan has been prepared by the Nagpur Municipal Corporations and the Nagpur Smart and Sustainable City Development Corporation Limited under the Zero Carbon Building Accelerator Program. This project was supported by ICLAI South Asia and WRI with funding from Global Environment Facility and UNEP. Before we go into the details of Nagpur Zero Carbon Building Action Plan, it is important to understand what are the targets set by national government and why buildings are so important. So you know that India has published its NDCs, wherein the national government aims to reduce the emission intensity of its GDP by 45% by 2030 from 2005 levels and increase its share of non-fossil fuel-based electricity supply. Further, India aims to become net zero by 2070. The LT Leads highlights the need for climate responsive urban planning and design and energy and material efficient buildings as the key elements of its low carbon development transition. Let us now look at some projections for the building industry. So it is estimated that India will add 40 billion square meter of building stocks by 2050. Under an unchecked scenario, India may experience increased cooling demand, increased electricity consumptions, and increased emission also. Hence, implementing zero carbon strategies in future buildings present a huge potential to reduce energy consumptions and GHG emissions in India's building sector. Now, moving on to the Nagpur case. You know that Nagpur is the geographical center of India in the state of Maharashtra with an estimated population of 3.1 million. Nagpur experienced a composite climate characterized by extremely hot summer and cold winter. During summer, the maximum temperature can exceed 40 degrees Celsius, which can lead to increased electricity consumptions to meet the cooling demands from the build-up area, including residential, commercial, and public buildings. We have carried out the GHG emission inventory in 2017 and 18, and we noted that 1.5 tons of CO2 equivalent is emitting just from the buildings, and where 65% of CSG emissions from all energy sources. While we initiated the preparations of the ZCBA action plan, we carried out the extensive stakeholder consultations with material manufacturers, building developers, academic institutions, architects, and civil engineers, and also with the green building experts, and mapped the challenges of the buildings ecosystem. So the zero carbon building uptakes in Nagpur has been slow. Some of the key reasons for a slow uptake includes, first, the important aspect is the voluntary nature of the policies such as NBC, Eco-Niwas Samhita, and green building codes. High cost of green building compliance that deters buyers, as this cost is transferred to the cost transfers to them eventually. Lack of workforce trained in green building construction, as there is a limited demand for such a technique, and technology is also a big concern. And political aspects related to green building construction technique versus conventional techniques when considering high-rise constructions and long-term maintenance was the main problem. The Zero Carbon Building Action Plan is a first of its kind action plan that stresses the decarbonization across a building entire life cycle stage. And Nagpur is a pioneer who prepared the Zero Carbon Building Action Plan in Nagpur context. The action plan assesses the local context and challenges in detail to provide interventions that build on existing national and state policies and align with the India's net zero and low emission development goals. This action plan also advanced Nagpur's climate action plan, implementation and supports with the city global commitments such as GCOM and City Race to Zero. These interventions are designed considering the involvement of various government stakeholders at the city and state level, and also private stakeholders. Now, let's look at the zero carbon building action plan for Nagpur in detail. The action plan consists of a 28 policy, regulatory, materials and technology interventions, spanning across 4 buildings life cycle stage from pre-constructions to end of life. The interventions will be gradually scaled up in the short, medium, and long term to ensure all new buildings in the city are net zero by 2030 and all buildings are net zero by 2050. The action plan also has recommendations to improve the capacity of building industry, stakeholders, and financing ZCP actions. So the interventions are designed to consider the aspects such as mandates and guidelines by the local, state, and national government, enforcements and monitoring of actions to ensure ZCBA mandates are efficiently implemented, the incentives and policy push for large adoption, updating existing procurement policies of the government to prioritize the procurements of eco-friendly and green certified materials and technologies, possibilities of integrating renewable and energy efficient system, promotions of material reuse and circularity of the byproduct from various processes like use as a fly ash for manufacturing bricks, and pilot interventions to showcase the benefits of low carbon materials and technologies. The city intends to first implement ZCBA actions in public buildings and affordable housing schemes. These actions will be gradually scaled up through policy and regulatory amendments and voluntary measures to cover all types of the buildings considering the scale of impact. So let us take up an example of an interventions from the pre-construction phase. These interventions aim to integrate the guidelines and codes such as the National Building Code, Energy Conservation Building Code, Eco Niwas Samhita, etc., directly into the development control regulation. This would be prudent as currently these codes and regulations are voluntary and are only referred to as when absolutely required. As a start, the Nagpur Municipal Corporation will coordinate with the state government to include easy to implement and scalable clauses and sections directly into the development control regulation. Further, these regulations will be scaled up to ensure net zero compliances in future buildings. These interventions will have immediate benefits in terms of energy saving, urban heat island reduction, occupant health and well-being and thermal comfort, and GHG emission reductions also. These interventions also highlights multi-stakeholders and multi-level government coordinations wherein the city and state government will work together to update the development control regulation. Private stakeholders such as real estate developers, architects, and technology manufacturers will advise on such a regulatory amendments to ensure maximum benefits while being pro-development. Like this, we have detailed out other interventions across 4 building life cycle stages, highlighting short to long-term goals and anticipated benefits and have a map responsible stakeholders. We have also identified the interventions on social well-being and gender inclusion targeted at the construction workforce and highlighted case studies showcasing the use of eco-friendly materials and techniques. So this is very important aspects, the monitoring review and verification framework stresses the importance of the government and private sector and builds on the climate core and stakeholder committee established for Nagpur Climate Action Plan. The Nagpur Municipal Corporation and Nagpur Smart City, along with the various parastatal agencies have deliberating and implementation role, while the buildings industry stakeholders have an advisory role. Their efforts will inform the state government's policies and recommendations and help them provide strategic oversight. Nagpur has already begun its progress towards the zero carbon buildings. Under the ZCBA project, Nagpur city has prepared a model RFP for future public buildings. I will explain this in the next slide. Under the Building Efficiency Accelerator project, that's a BEA, Nagpur has developed easy to understand guidelines for energy efficient homes. And these all guidelines are available on our website for the use by the local people also. The solutions and actions provided in the guidelines can be referred by architects, engineers, real estate developers, and homeowners. To efficiently manage and recycle the C&D waste generated in the city has developed a 150 TPD C&D waste recycling plant. To promote a green building, the Nagpur Municipal Corporation recently announced property tax incentives of up to 20% on green building certification for new residential, commercial, and institutional buildings. Now, coming to another key output of the ZCBA project, the model RFP was prepared alongside the ZCBA action plan to initiate decarbonization in future public buildings in Nagpur. It incorporates recommendations from IGBC standards and regulations such as National Building Code, Energy Consumption Building Code, and Maharashtra Development Control Regulations. The model RFP aims for exemplary performance and compliance, but is flexible enough to adapt to site-specific conditions and city requirement. Apart from general building clauses, the model RFP also incorporates clauses to develop green healthcare spaces and affordable housing projects, as the city intends to develop these building typologies in the future. Now, coming to the way forward for implementing the ZCBA action plan, the city initially intends to implement ZCBA interventions in future government buildings and affordable housing projects. Further, the city intends to gradually scale up the policy and regulatory framework for citywide ZCBA uptake. Throughout the action plan implementation, the city will engage with the Maharashtra state government for policy and regulatory support. While implementing the actions, the knowledge and experience of building industry stakeholders will be crucial. So thank you for opportunity to present the ZCBA action plan for Nagpur. I will be happy to share the ZCBA action plan for Nagpur for further reading. We are thankful to have a partner such as ICLA South Asia and look forward to collaborations to such a forward-looking projects. For more information on Nagpur Sustainability Initiative, please visit Nagpur Municipal Corporations and Nagpur Smart City official website. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Pranita. I will now invite Victor Cote from Accra Metropolitan Assembly to share also his experience and his expertise. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. So let me share my slide. Hello, good morning once again. I believe you can see my slides. Okay, so
Yes,
I'm Victor Cote. deputy head of waste department, and then also doubles as the city lead, technical lead for climate action implementation. And then I work with the Accra Metropolitan Assembly. Accra Metropolitan Assembly is the local government authority for the city of Accra, and that's where I work with. So my presentation will be on energy efficiency and then the case study of Accra, what we are doing to make buildings more energy efficient, and then also promoting renewable energy. So I'll provide a little background, and then we'll look at existing building regulations as well as codes and then the bylaws. And then we'll look at the gaps in the AMA building and then physical development bylaw. That's the local level bylaw that regulates buildings. And then we'll look at energy audits that we conducted, the distribution of energy consumption, energy cost saving and emissions analysis, and then some interventions that we started as a city. So the basis of our activities or actions in the energy sector is based on our climate action plan that was published in 2020 and is valid up to the end of this year, that is 2025. And the climate action plan was based on the very first city level emission inventory for the 2015 base year, which was released in 2018. And in the inventory, we realized that about 26% of greenhouse emissions were coming from energy in buildings. And then also most of the energy is used for lighting and then cooling in residential and industrial properties. You know, Accra is a coastal city, and average temperatures could be in excess of 30 degrees at times. So there's the need to use mechanical or electrical ways of cooling and then also lighting. And then residential properties contribute is responsible for 13% of greenhouse gas emissions because of energy being used in such properties. And then also in our climate action plan, we are targeting 50% of buildings to be fitted with with rooftop PVs by 2050. Sorry, it's not by 2025, but rather by 2050. And then also we are targeting of obtaining or achieving 45% of industrial and commercial operations being taking place or happening in energy efficient buildings also by 2050. And then we have some regulations and then bylaws that guard physical development in Accra. Currently, the city bylaw on building and then physical development was based on LI 1630, and that was the National Building Regulations in 1996. And as of now, we've not updated the bylaw. Now we have a new building regulation, LI 2465, and this was published in 2022. And these have provisions for green buildings, and then there are some other provisions that takes care of lighting and other mechanical fixtures on buildings that ensures energy efficiency as well as complying with green building criteria. And then also we have the Ghana Building Code that was published in 2018 by the Ghana Standards Authority. And the building code, unlike the building regulations, are not backed by a legal the codes more or less define standards by which buildings have to abide with to adapt energy efficient and other measures. And then also you have the local level regulations, that's the AMA bylaws, that also defines how buildings should be constructed or put up in the within the local jurisdiction. And then also these bylaws and then the building regulations are bounded by have legal bindings with penalties for non-compliance on such regulations. And then, so these are some gaps that so these were some gaps that were identified between the existing building regulations and then the AMA bylaws. There are several of them. For example, in the area of lighting, regulation section 1A3 of the new building regulation, that's LI 2465, defines makes recommendation for lighting. But since our current bylaws are based on the 2016 building regulation, we do not have provision in there. And then also, if you look at section 195 of LI 2465, it makes provision for green buildings for private and then commercial use, but this is not provided for in the previous building regulation. That's the 2016 building regulations, and then all these regulations also conforms with the Ghana Building Code that was published by the Ghana Standards Authority. So, in short, LI 2465 aligns with the regulation standard 1207, that's the building code. But the previous LI does not align with the building code because it was published before the publication of the not existing or the current national building code. And then also on solar PVs, the same section 195 of LI 2465 also defines how also defines installation of PVs on buildings with a defined floor area, and this is taken from this conforms with part 3710 of the existing buildings code. So, in order to bridge, to make our buildings, municipal buildings, more energy efficient, because we believe that as city authorities, we have to show the way for private and commercial property developers to also adopt energy efficient and then renewable energy technologies. So, with the assistance of C40 under the Climate Action Implementation Program, the city conducted energy audit on 13 municipal buildings, and this includes schools, markets, staff accommodation, health facilities, and other typologies of buildings. And then one of the results from the energy audit was that air conditions and then lighting are the major energy consuming appliance for all these public buildings. So there's the need to deploy or to design interventions to reduce the use of air conditions and then also to limit use of lighting in public buildings. That will be a showcase to private developers to also adapt such measures in development. So this is the distribution of average energy consumption in the 13 facilities where the energy audit was conducted. And from the chart, you can see that ACs and then lighting consume more than 50%, are responsible for more than 50% of all energy consumption in these buildings. ACs alone account for 35%, and then lighting 22%. And then also office equipment like printers, computers also contributes responsible for 18% of all energy consumptions in these buildings. And this is quite significant because three appliances, the office equipment, lighting, and then ACs are responsible for close to 70% of all energy consumption in these buildings. And this applies to private and then the commercial properties as well, because the consumptions are very similar. So as part of the energy audit, some analysis were made on energy costs, emission, and as well as emissions, and then also propose some energy efficient improvements that reduce use of energy in this building. Because in Ghana now, about 50% of our energy is from thermal sources, and these utilize a lot of fossil fuel to power generating plants. So it's very important for local government authorities to put in measures to reduce reliance or to reduce the consumption of energy within our respective jurisdictions. So some of the proposed energy efficient improvements are the implementation of or installment of smart meters to monitor energy consumption, then also to raise awareness, and then also to reduce energy consumption by from ACs. There are proposals to also install smart thermostatic controls to reduce energy use in ACs, and then also we are looking at installing PVs, rooftop PVs, to make especially the city hall more energy efficient, because most of the energy through the energy audit, we realize most of the energy consumed by public buildings are the head office complex or the Accra Metropolitan Assembly. So installing solar PVs will enable the city to reduce or to prevent emission of about 169 tons of greenhouse gases per year, and this is quite significant. And so there are some actions that we've taken so far. Currently, we started processes to review our existing city bylaws, buildings, and then physical development bylaw to conform with the current building regulation. That's LI 2470, and then also to comply or to conform with the building codes as released or published by the Ghana Standards Authority. Because as I mentioned earlier, the basis for our current bylaw is the 2016 building regulation. We do not have provisions for green buildings. And then also we started implementation of some of the recommendations in the energy audit, such as installation of smart meters, and then also installing some thermostats on some of our cooling systems, and then also regular servicing of air conditioners in most of our properties across the city. And then also at the city level, an energy management committee have been formed to monitor energy use at especially the head office complex, at the City Hall of the Accra Metropolitan Assembly. And then also with the assistance of COMSA, and then with some funding from GIZ, some smart meters have been installed at some properties of some facilities of the Accra Metropolitan Assembly, including hospitals, head office complex, and then some other offices of the city, of the assembly across the city, to monitor energy consumption in real time. So in the next few weeks, further capacity building will be conducted for city staff to be able to use the app to monitor energy consumption. And then also we have some kind of convention. It's not documented, though. We have, in the permitting process, some permit fees are paid for a developer to acquire building permit, and there's a discount that is given to developers who have incorporated energy efficiency and then renewable energy in their designs. It's not documented, but the physical development committee evaluates and then ensures that this discount is given to developers. So these are some of the draft tests for the bylaw, for the update of city bylaws to make buildings more energy efficient. For example, we are basing the red text indicates new provisions that we are introducing into our bylaw. For example, instead of instead of stipulating penalties in the 2016 building regulation, we are now using the 2022 building regulation. And then also energy efficiency and green building requirements. The bylaw will mandate developers to comply with the building regulations of 2022 instead of 2016 that do not have provisions for green buildings. And then also developers are also required to submit energy reports and then document demonstrating compliance for these types of development. That's the private offices, public buildings, as well as residential properties with the respective floor areas. This provision is not in our current bylaws. So these are new provisions that we are introducing into the reviewed bylaw that we are working on. And then also
Victor, Victor, if I can kindly ask you to wrap up. I
think
to
this
conclude.
is the last. This is the last slide.
Thank
So
you.
these are further examples of draft tests for our bylaws, and then also we are also incorporating certification, green building certification in development or building permits. Developers must comply with one of these recommended certification systems as indicated here. So thank you very much for your attention, and you can visit ama.gov.gh for further information on how we are trying to make the city sustainable. Thank you very much. Thank you once again.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mr. Victor Cote. It's impressive to see how it's from roadmap to law and to implementation. Congratulations. I will now invite Dalia Renalder, who is co-lead of also the GlobalABC Subnationals Action Group and program officer at UN Habitat, to give her remarks and conclude this webinar. Thank you so much, Leah. Please.
Thank you so much, and it's a pleasure speaking after Victor and hearing about this real concrete example of how to turn a roadmap into action. So also warm welcome from my side. Thanks so much for having me here. And what I'll do is just maybe tie some of these things that we've just heard to the wider 2025 roadmap. Both Gulnara and Carmen already mentioned it in the very beginning. So to say 2025 as a year, as a really important year for climate action. I like to think of it almost as a make or break moment for our collective climate efforts, because of course of the really important COP that's happening later this year in Brazil, but also because of the NDCs 3.0 that are currently being updated. And I think for us are collectively a really important opportunity to bring both cities, but also buildings more strongly into these NDCs. So that's maybe also the entry point I wanted to take for these really short intervention on the opportunities that these NDCs 3.0 offer, and the opportunities that also offers working with the subnationals, and that's of course the topic of this webinar here today. So I mean, we've been seeing also in this rather challenging geopolitical situation that the climate agenda is of course being pushed a little bit to the sidelines, but I want to use this. I want to showcase that if we work in and with cities where this agenda is really going incredibly strong, we have an opportunity to make sure that the targets of the Paris Agreement are staying alive, and not only staying alive, but can be thriving, while at the same time we can be addressing socioeconomic opportunities at the local level, and we can be talking about how to make our cities more livable, how to make the places that we live in more livable as well, and how we can just use these climate entry points as an opportunity for better, healthier, and more sustainable cities. And of course, the NDCs are an entry point. They're not the only entry point. NDCs, of course, as national climate plans, just an indication, and then this needs to be implemented on the ground. But my point is, if we work in and with cities, we can make sure that this implementation trickles down to the local level and is also being implemented at the local level. So if we look at the current situation, the second generation of NDCs, only a bit over a quarter have strong urban content. That means specifically highlighting the challenges, the opportunities, the mitigation and adaptation potential that exists in cities. And not only that, so that's only about a quarter of them, meaning, of course, that there is quite a lot of NDCs where there is lots of room for improvement. And my second statistic that I'd like to bring in here is not only to say that not many NDCs have strong urban content, but we also see a big disconnect when it comes to the finance conversation, where almost all of the NDCs, not surprisingly, are saying that they need money in order to implement lots of the climate action. But there's only a very few in the NDCs that are making a specific reference to the need for urban climate finance to implement local climate action. So if we see how cities are being, on the one hand, affected by the climate crisis, but also the large share of emissions that are coming from cities, it's really a big missed opportunity to not think about also how to get the money into the places where it matters the most. On the ground. So the last thing I want to say is that, of course, now a big opportunity to make a change here. From UN Habitat side, we're working with a wide range of partners to support parties in strengthening the urban content of the NDCs more generally, but also, of course, sectorially. So this is where the opportunity comes in to also think about cities and buildings in an integrated way. So we are really thinking around how national governments can assess where they currently stand with their NDCs, how they can prepare moving forward, think about what are the networks, what are the partners that exist at the level that they should bring into this NDC process, but then also how they can design an NDC that is collaborative, that is cross-cutting, that takes into account the urban realities on the ground. That's something that we'll be launching by next week. So I invite you all to keep your ears and eyes peeled for that one. But then, of course, also inviting everybody who wants to learn more to reach out. We'll be having quite a bit of on-the-ground capacity building, but also just support to parties in terms of how such NDC collaboration can look like. So with that, that's it from my side. Thanks so much, Malia. I think you're probably the best person to wrap us up for this webinar.
Yes, I will. As we are already, thank you very much, Leah. As we are already over time, I will just thank you all very much, and also kindly invite you to the session of this afternoon at 3 p.m. Where we will be able to see, to have a share experience also from Neo Eco and from Recife. Thank you all. Bye.